So we're going to go ahead and begin our review of Unit 9 here. Again, we're going to go through over the basic details just to make sure you guys are prepared for any possible essay or multiple choice question. We'll do the best we can in the short time that we have. So as you guys know, during the Great Depression, Herbert Hoover was the president that kind of spearheaded that whole thing. Not that he spearheaded the election, but the Depression, but that he was in charge at the time. And he ran against Alfred E. Smith. Now, the important thing we should know about Alfred E. Smith is that he was the first candidate to run that was a what? Catholic. So remember, when we talk about Kennedy, yes, Kennedy was the first Catholic president, but he wasn't necessarily the first Catholic candidate. That would be Alfred E. Smith. Nonetheless, all this stuff happens. He gets elected, and he has the very famous phrase of, a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. I mean, his whole philosophy was that he was going to try to eliminate poverty in America. And he genuinely believed that this was something that he could achieve. Then the great crash of 1929 happened, and ultimately this is a crash in the stock market, right? And a lot of this happened because it was a bull market in America. What's a bull market? Where the economy is growing and rapidly increasing. And during a bull market, we kind of believe that it'll never end, right? And so we kept on buying and buying. And it's okay if I buy, even though it's $100 more, because likely it'll double in value the next time. And so really, bull markets are just an example of over-speculation. There was also buying in margin. And what does it mean to buy in margin, folks? Yeah, when you buy a stock, but you're buying it with borrowed money, right? So that's like, Mr. King, can I borrow I'm going to buy a car, but can I borrow $10,000 from you? Okay, but are you really buying the car, or am I buying the car? I'm buying the car. And if I want my money back, let's say tomorrow, are you going to be in a position to give me my money back? Probably not. So buying on margin was not the best idea when buying stock, because if the stock fell, not only did the person that you lent the money lost money, but you also would lose all of your possessions. So this is another example of, again, the economy tanking. Of course, the great crash happens. Everyone loses their money. Again, people start running to the banks because the banks are running out of money. So are people going to want to pull their money out? Yes, and this happens. Actually, this is what's happening in Greece recently. Or, sorry, not Greece. Cyprus recently, near Greece. And again, people are panicking, freaking out. They've lost all their money because the banks ran out of money. And again, people always ask, what do you mean they ran out of money? Where did the money go? And the reality, the money just disappeared, right? The money just left the economy. You start seeing the rise of soup kitchens. And again, of course, the U.S. economy drops pretty dramatically at this time period. Stock prices fall. The gross national product of what the U.S. is producing falls. And so the effects of the Great Depression are pretty basic here. I mean, this is more of the human toll, but you'll know about the businesses as well. I mean, you have tons of banks and businesses failing. So again, pretty dramatic here. Stock market pretty much drops to only $20 billion, which is not good. You know how we talk about the Dow Jones dropped like 5% today, which is not good. It dropped like 300 points. Imagine the equivalent of the Dow Jones dropping like 80%. I mean, if they said that, the Dow Jones went from 14,000 today to 2,000. That's a big drop. It's not good. Bank closures. Lots of banks were failing, and by 1934, banks actually stopped closing. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing? Because what does it tell us? By 1934, there were no more banks closing because there weren't really any more banks left to close. We closed over 10,000 of them, so the economy had taken everyone hostage and kind of killed them all. And so, again, the sad squirrel talks to the guy who's gone crazy because he's talking to a squirrel and says, but why didn't you save your money for the future when times were good? And he said, I did. I put it in a bank like everyone told me to. And the bank failed. And again, this will not happen today because banks are now what? They're FDIC insured, right? They're FDIC insured. Nonetheless, all these business failures, steel production drops by 80%, industrial output drops by 50%. And again, businesses are also failing. And if businesses are failing, they won't be able to do what for the economy? You won't be able to produce goods. And if they're not producing goods, why is that also impactful to you guys? Yeah, there's not enough food. There's also not enough what? jobs. And so all of this kind of spirals out of control, and the economy gets further and further into the hole. Eventually, a massive unemployment. Some cities, 50% unemployment. Farmers, 33% unemployment. Nationwide, 25 to 40%, depending on who you talk to. And this is pretty bad, right? I mean, nationwide, you have almost a 25% unemployment rate. Does anyone know what Spain's current unemployment rate is right now? 27%. Spain's current unemployment rate is 27%. 1 out of every 4 people are unemployed because their economy had a much worse response, or rather, had a much worser problem. Yeah, whatever. Impact. Not impact's the wrong word, but it dealt with much worse problems than our economy during the housing crisis. Unemployment shoots through the roof. Workers' wages haven't changed over time, and again, you have all these problems. So, you have the rise of Hoovervilles, right? So you go skip all the way over to Hoovervilles. You have Hoovervilles, where people have no more homes left, thanks to Herbert Hoover, Hoover flags, Hoover blankets. So find your Hoovervilles and go straight to there. Of course, you guys also know Dorothea Lange, so that if the name comes up, you guys should know Dorothea Lange, the famous photographer. Took the photos of the sadness and depression at the time. People losing their jobs. Psychological impacts you guys already know, right? Soup kitchens were a problem. People felt like they couldn't provide for their families. People went on the road. Again, you have the psychological impact. You have a high rate of what at this time? Suicides. People just felt worthless. People had to live on the streets. What rates go really up amongst families? Yeah, divorce rates going up. So that's kind of a problem. And again, of course, you have racism and job discrimination because they're all competing for the same jobs. You should take a look at this list in your notes and just highlight this entire thing, because you should know the long-term causes of the Great Depression, because they do a fairly good job explaining what happened here. Again, over-speculation, unequal distribution of wealth resulted in us having a limited income. Overproduction of goods will do what? Yeah, prices will fall. If you have huge farm surpluses, prices will also fall. If we don't pay back our debts, people won't get their money back. Over-speculation is a problem. Weak industries, and of course, mass consumption. For all these reasons, the economy collapsed. Good so far? Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Snowball effect, we all know, blah, 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 global impacts, so on and so forth. So Hoover responds to the crash. Now, Hoover, is he the type of person to say, hey, you know what, we're going to go ahead and fix this economy by giving people jobs, by getting directly involved and making sure that the government protects the needs of the people? Is he that kind of president? No, because he is a 1920s Republican that believes in what philosophy of government? He believes in laissez-faire, and he believes in rugged individualism, right? He doesn't believe that the government should help the people. He believes that who should help the people? Themselves. So he does a few things, though, that maybe are not purely laissez-faire, but still, he gets involved. For example, the Federal Farm Board, where he says, okay, maybe I'll help some farmers out. Okay, maybe I'll provide some help for farmers. But then he says, you know what's really hurting the economy? Trade with other countries. When the British sell their goods to America, that means you're not buying American goods. So we should create a Hawley-Smoot tariff. And how high was this tariff? 60%. The whole point being, we're going to protect American industries from the nasty British, French, Mexican goods coming in here, because we can't compete. But when they came in, and we put in this tariff, how did those countries respond? They also raised their tariff. So now we're not buying their goods, but they're not buying ours. And remember, Hoover was warned, this is a bad idea. Don't do this. But he's like, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, we can stop pretty much global trade. And so this is a serious problem for Hoover. And that was a foolish mistake. But he says, you know what, I'm still not going to help the people because that's not the government's role. Who should help these poor people that now have nothing? The people that are wealthier, the people that are better off, the people that have the opportunities. They will give, they will donate, they'll work at soup kitchens, and that will fix the U.S. economy. No, it won't. That'll feed that person for a day, but what's that person going to do tomorrow? Oh, right, still be unemployed. So that's not going to fix the problem at all. And so he says, okay, fine, I got it. I can't really fix this problem without fixing the economy. So I'm going to get off the laissez-faire bandwagon real quick, and I will try to create jobs. And he's going to try to create jobs by investing in what? Public works, including the Hoover Dam, because again, will this create jobs? Yeah. That's the idea. He's going to spend, what, $500 million on jobs or something like that? However much money it is. $750 million on jobs. 750 million, not billion. He also gonna create the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, the RFC, in which he's gonna give money to the people, right? No, he's still gonna give money to businesses and states because this is still an example of what? Trickle down. I'm not gonna give you the money to pay for your AP tests. I'm gonna give the money to LA County, who will give it to your parents in April during tax returns, who will then give it to you eventually when you take the AP test. Trickle down. That's the basic idea. So again, is this part of the New Deal here? No, it's not. This is Hoover's plan, right? So even though it's an acronym, RFC, people get confused. Oh, RFC is part of, no, FDR's New Deal. No, it's not. This is Hoover's. Yes.
What was his domestic policy?
Hoover's domestic policy was, we got to deal with the Great Depression in very terrible ways. Bonus Army. There's his policy. Norris LaGuardia Anti-Injunction Act. You should know that he tried to stop using injunctions against who? Labor unions. He's saying, oh, these people need to strike from time to time. But he said, ultimately, again, I'm not going to help you. Who's going to help you? You're going to help you, because it's not my fault. It's your fault. Well, so the bonus army said, hey, remember that bonus you promised us in like 10 years or 20 years? Can we have that bonus now? And Congress said, why? And their response was, because we'll be dead if we don't have it now. And so Congress looked through their books and they said, sorry, we don't have the money to pay you now. So please leave. And they bust them home. But did they all leave? No, and some of them continued to protest. And how did Hoover respond to these World War I veterans that fought and risked their lives and all they wanted was a chance to survive in this country that was crumbling before them? How did Hoover respond? Yeah, he sent in the U.S. Army to forcibly remove them, setting camps on fire, and he fired upon them, and it was not good. And so, folks, who was a victim, or who ultimately was a victim of the bonus army? Hoover. Yes, the soldiers that also were killed, but Hoover. And so in the election of 1932, Hoover says, I will run again because clearly I've handled this problem well. And FDR said, no, let me run because I will pledge to you and to myself and the American people a new deal. Okay? I will give direct aid to the people, and I know you guys need a drink, and hell, we can tax it. Let's repeal Prohibition. So, they vote. Hoover's like, let's just increase the tariffs. I think that'll make it better. I don't think we've made it, maybe 90% will make things work out. But that's not ideal. And so ultimately, FDR wins, no surprise there. Which one? This one? Yes, I like this cartoon a lot. And of course, Hoover says, okay, well, you got elected, good luck, here's the problem. Well, the first thing FDR does to eliminate the lame duck period is to pass the 20th Amendment, right? To eliminate the lame duck period. So make sure you got that. Next up, he also ends Prohibition, the 21st Amendment. So everyone good there? Prohibition, the 21 Amendment. Good? Bueno? All right. So the New Deal. FDR's got to calm the people down and explain to them that maybe what's happening in their economy is not the craziest thing in the world, but he can fix it. But he says, you got to trust me. So the fireside chats were one really good way in which FDR spoke to the people directly, calm their fears, make them feel like they were part of the national conversation. So he did that. He said, I will create jobs and we will fix this economy and we'll do it with help from Cordell Hull and Francis Perkins and Harold Ickes and Harry Hopkins and my wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. And he's going to do it through the 3 R's of relief, recovery, and reform. You guys know the 3, right? Any essay you're writing about the New Deal should include these 3, right? This is how you should break up your 3 paragraphs. Relief, recovery, and reform. And you should already know that each of these are relief, recovery, and reform. Did we ever do a chart on relief, recovery, and reform? Yeah. We did do a chart? Okay. First solution, bank holiday. We're going to close all the banks, and what are we going to do with them? Who can raise their hand and tell me what we're going to do with these banks when we close them? Raymond. Inspect them, and when we're done with the bank holiday, what are we going to do? Eliminate the weak ones and allow only the strong ones to survive. Now, what is that going to do for the American people? If we say we're going to close all the banks and only let the strong ones open up again, what is that going to create? Trust and confidence. That is the most important thing in any economy. If you don't have trust in your economy, are you going to buy or spend your money? No. So you need trust, and that's what he was trying to create public confidence. And so he does so with the Emergency Banking Relief Act of 1933. He's also going to create Hulk, but don't worry about Hulk so much.
Is it incredible?
What?
Is it incredible?
It was pretty good.
Incredible Hulk.
It was pretty good. The federal FDIC was created by Glass-Steagall also. So FDIC was important because it made sure that all banking deposits were insured, which is important. What did Glass-Steagall do? It also separated commercial from investment banking. Good stuff. The SEC, you guys should know the Securities and Exchange Commission, to investigate fraud and insider trading to make sure that doesn't happen again. Then you have your relief and unemployment programs like the CCC, FERA. You should just know these, guys. CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, Federal Emergency Relief Association or Administration, Civil Works Administration, Public Works Administration, National Youth Administration, Works Progress Administration. In terms of agricultural assistance, you also have the Agricultural Adjustment Act. That's something else you guys need to know? You guys doing okay so far? I mean, really, just highlight all the ones. You should also know the Dust Bowl, right? What caused that? I mean, and ultimately, folks, because of the Dust Bowl, people left where and moved where? So let's start. First part, people left what state? Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and they moved where? California. People sometimes get this wrong. People say they left and moved to Oklahoma. No, they did not. They left from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kansas to California because are we having Dust Bowls there? No, with the exception of yesterday on the 5 freeway. Otherwise, things should be fine. In terms of dealing with industry, you have the National Industrial Recovery Act. The whole point of this was to create labor practices that would improve the economy, right? Maximum efficiency practices, like what? What were some of the practices they were trying to establish? A minimum wage to make sure everyone gets paid. Maximum hours to make sure that what? Yeah, everyone can work. Minimum prices to make sure there's no cutthroat pricing. Yeah, production quotas to make sure we're not overproducing. So you should know those different policies that were instituted by the NIRA. And if you were part and parcel and following along with the NIRA, you could put what on your storefront window? The poster with the what? The Blue Eagle. Now, what Supreme Court case tried to take down the NRA? Schechter case. Schechter Poultry Company v. U.S. saying that what could not happen? Yeah, two things. The government could not regulate intrastate commerce, and two, does anyone have the second part? Ah. Why? Well, that's the first part. It tried to integrate interstate commerce. Here's the part that I guess I forgot to tell you guys. The reason why this was considered unconstitutional as well, because it said Congress may not give its powers to the president. Congress may not give its powers to the president. That's what Schechter also ruled. Congress may not give its powers to the president. Because pretty much the president was in charge of the NIRA and the NRA, and he was the one regulating interstate commerce. And whose power does that supposed to belong to? Congress. But Congress said, oh no, Mr. President, you're fixing the economy, you handle it. And Supreme Court said, you can't give your powers to the presidency, that's unconstitutional. Everyone good there? So be aware of that. Judiciary Reorganization Bill, he got so mad, he's like, whoa, don't make me reform you. And a lot of options there, like cramming the Supreme Court with like 9 million other people. So there's that. So you have the court packing scheme and whatever else. Here he is, again, government reorganization, Supreme Court revision, and then dictator. This was on your CST as well for some of you, suggesting that he was becoming a dictator because he was what?
Third term?
Serving for a third term. But again, including all the other things, right? National Labor Relations Board, again, we're going to ban what? Yellow dog contracts. What's a yellow dog contract? Yeah, you promise that you will not join a labor union, which is kind of messed up. Fair Labor Standards Act, so again, setting up basic labor standards, good working conditions, working hours, that kind of thing. Tennessee Valley Authority, this is a must. You must know this one. This will come up. The Tennessee Valley Authority is considered to be the most, what? Socialistic. It's creeping socialism is a term that's used because the government was what?
Electricity?
Yes, but the problem was it was competing with private industry, right? And so this is considered the most socialist because the government was competing with private industry while selling electricity. Now, to be fair, was this supposed to be good for the Tennessee Valley? Yes, but they said the government should not be selling electricity. Private industry should be selling electricity. And the government said, well, if you sell it at a lower price, we wouldn't have to be here. But you're not, and it's hurting the people. So the TVA, creeping socialism, you should know it. Here's examples, TVA, TVA. Housing reform, don't worry about housing reform. I think you'll be okay. Social Security Act, yeah, definitely know that. SSA, you should know this for sure. You guys know what this does? Medical insurance, health insurance, unemployment insurance. Indian Reorganization Act, again, what are we going to do with the Native Americans? Restore, no, not assimilate. Restore tribal ownership. Recognize treaties. Restore tribal constitutions and governments.
Did we?
Yeah. We did. Which is why now it says like you are now entering blank land reservation. We gave them back their territory. We're giving back the land. So they're sovereign. They're dependent sovereigns though. So they're domestic dependents. But they can self-govern now. And they can run their land however they like. It doesn't have to be individual ownership. It can be tribal ownership of land. So we're not going to dictate what they will do in their land, but are they still governed by the laws of the United States? Yes, but not by the state in which they reside.
So are they like their own country?
They operate just like another state. Does that make sense? They're operated like territories. Yeah, Karina?
So like they're their own state
So
within
you're
a
not
state.
They're a state within a state within a state. Yeah,
Because
because they'll pretty much they're governed just like another state without statehood. It's like a territory.
So like the state they're in can't tell them what to do.
No.
But the federal government can.
Yes, At the same time, there are certain regulations that California can place on a tribe because of the impact it will have on the state of California. So, like, we can't just do whatever we want in that tribal territory because of the local impact it might have. So we can't just start building nuclear power plants, right? Because it might have a local impact. So for the most part, though, it's like, here are the set of things you can decide on your own. Schools, education, roads, whatever else. And there's, like, taxes, though, we might tax those. It just depends. So did the New Deal work? Did the first New Deal work? Looks like it. The first New Deal was working out. He was like, hey, unemployment went down, 3 million people less unemployed. He's like, great. So you should vote for me. And then they did. They're like, yeah, because how could we not? Because look at all these people that are no longer unemployed. And then he said, well, because so many people are, since this is working, what should I do? I should stop the New Deal because the economy has clearly recovered. But did it recover? No. The only reason why these people were unemployed was because who hired them? The government. It wasn't because private industries had recovered. So we end the New Deal, and pretty much what happens? We go back into recession, unemployment increases again. That's a problem. Big mistake, right? Big mistake. So we have critics of the New Deal, the American Liberty League, and they believe that what? The New Deal is too what? Socialist. You know, you're doing too much. This is not capitalist. This is not laissez-faire. This is mostly what political party? Republicans. These are mostly Republicans who oppose FDR. Then Father Charles Coughlin, he said that we're not doing enough either, and then he eventually became kicked off the air because he was a racist. Huey Long, he was more of a socialist. What was his program that he promoted? Share Our Wealth program. The basic idea was that he wanted to give money back to every family, $5,000. It was about redistribution of wealth, which is not very popular. Even among the middle class, it's not very popular. Dr. Francis Townsend, he said that we should provide more aid and insurance to who? The elderly. So was the New Deal a failure? Mostly yes, right? Mostly I would say yes. But again, you have all these answers here. Government got too big, states became weaker and lost influence, the debt grew, became a handout state, creeping socialism, we were court packing and dumbing Congress, and FDR was a dictator, and millions were unemployed, and we spent it a lot and didn't really do anything, and we failed to fix the Depression. But it was okay, right? It was, I mean, the biggest thing was what? It prevented the economy from collapsing, right? Did we sink to near complete, utter destruction? Sure. But the New Deal helped prop us up and allowed us to float until what? World War II. So we were allowed to tread water until World War II. Change slides. Again, we prevented collapse. We prevented people from going hungry. We distributed national income, which is pretty sweet. We helped people retain their self-respect. We, again, did we become super socialist? No, we still maintained free enterprise. We still maintained capitalism. And so people say, oh, FDR made us super socialist. There's still a Walmart and a Target and a Best Buy and an Apple and, an Amazon.com. Those aren't government-owned industries. So clearly, he helped the economy by making sure that these private industries could still remain. He cured capitalism of its abuses, though. Capitalism is great, provided that people don't abuse it, by the way, which they will. And so he made sure that we got rid of all those serious problems. And again, he took a middle-of-the-road approach. He wasn't, hey, let's do everything that's really Democratic or everything that's really Republican. He took a middle-of-the-road approach to make sure that society would be better in general. So that's the New Deal. Questions there? Nope.
With the fair deal, how there's a lot of bolts and arrows,
Mm-hmm.
do we have to remember all those acronyms?
If you just write down the letters, you'll be fine. I mean, I know I would very much like for you guys to remember what CCC and FERA stands for. They will give you credit even if you just write down the acronyms. Don't just start making stuff up, though. Like at the ZTW, when he hired all these people. No, you still have to make sure that they're right. So AAA, CCC, CWA, PWA, WPA. You still have to know them. If you don't know the names, that's fine because you're saving yourself time anyway writing them down. But you should at least be familiar with what they did. And also, don't do the following. The CCC, PWA, CWA, WPA, and NYA all provided jobs. No. Be specific with some of them. Okay, don't just give me lists of things. That's not good. Everyone ready? World War II. So, World War II emerges, and we realize, hey, we can probably fix this problem of a Great Depression. But let's take a step back and talk about what leads to World War II. Of course, folks, we felt that the war was over, right? We thought all wars were over because we outlawed it with the Kellogg-Briand Pact. We felt pretty good about ourselves. Yay, the war's over. Another problem why World War II started is that because of the Great Depression, we ended what system that was paying Germany? The Dawes Plan. So the failure of the Dawes Plan resulted in Germany collapsing into Nazism. The League of Nations also failed. Why did the League of Nations fail? Well, ultimately, no one wanted to go to war, and the U.S. did not join, so that was a problem. But anyway, FDR's foreign policy. So FDR believed in good neighbor, which means what was he no longer going to do? Intervene in Latin America. He wanted to end occupation of Haiti and Nicaragua. He was going to end the Platt Amendment, which has to do with what country? Cuba. Whose hats are these? They're both American hats. Actually, it's America and Mexico's.
That's racist.
No, what? Well, which one are you? Which one do you assume is the American one?
Because it has stars, it's American.
No. That's why it's racist. I like that one. It's a nice flip. Anyway, so he decides to reduce tariffs. That's going to help again global trade. So that's a plus. He also recognizes the Soviet Union. That's a plus. Also, major benefits. The Tydings-McDuffie Act. This is going to do what? It's going to give Philippines independence in about how many years?
10 years.
10 years. So finally a timeline. 10 years. Because they have to, I mean, like, if I said, okay, you're going to be independent today. Good luck, Karina. You still need the training, right? So, I mean, like, before they're like, okay, now we know. But now there's a time. Now there's a sense of urgency. We have to set up local councils, local government. We got to elect people. Yes?
Did they ever go through with it?
Yeah. Well, not until 1946. It was supposed to be 1944, but there was a war going on. So after World War II, we did give the Filipinos their independence. There's that. And then martial law happened, and they got bad and violent and stuff. But you guys know these guys, right? I'm not going to talk about these guys because they're not going to be on your AP test. I mean, they will be, but they're not going to ask you, like, who's Hitler? So, Americans remained isolationist despite... So, Japan invaded all of these countries, and yet the League of Nations did nothing because did they want to go to war? No. And America did nothing except say, hey, Japan! Stop it. That's it. But that was it, right? Was America willing to go to war? No. All they did was condemn and said, Japan, if you keep on taking over those territories, we're not going to be your friend. Or like, if you keep taking those territories, then they're not invited to my party. You can still come, but not the rest of your extra territories. We're not going to recognize them. We still recognize you as a country, but not any of your extra territories. So that's how that works. But America remained isolationist for quite some time, and the question is why? Well, the Great Depression. Do we want to fight a war in the middle of a depression? No, but we probably should have because it would have created jobs. But we weren't thinking of that at the time. We're like, this is terrible. We have to focus on our problems. Secondly, the Nye Committee. The Nye Committee made a second guess because what did they accuse in World War I? Yeah, that it was created by banks and businesses and merchants of death. And the war was fought to make money on the lives of young Americans. We're not going to go through that again. We will not be deceived. Okay, then. So we declare neutrality. We say we will not get involved. That's your problem, not ours. But Roosevelt says we do have to quarantine a few things, though. I feel like we should get involved just a little bit. But he said, no, but we won't be actively involved. Then Soviets sign their non-aggression pact. Germany invades, blah, 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 blah. Cool speech, but not important. America responds. Like, England is attacked by the Germans, and are the Germans pretty much dominating all of Europe here? They've practically broken the back of the British. The British Air Force and the British Army are struggling to revive, and they're looking for a way to be able to fight back. Until luckily Russia's like, okay, maybe we'll fight, but we can't because we signed a treaty with Germany, and Germany's like, oh, don't worry, we're going to break that treaty anyway. So America decides to declare neutrality again regardless. And they declare neutrality, but they say maybe cash and carry will be okay. So in cash and carry, we say you may come to America, you may buy goods, and you must pay in cash and pick it up yourself. But all those goods must be non-military, right? So you can buy all non-military goods, and you have to pick it up yourself and pay in cash today. That's cash and carry. So are we slowly trying to figure out a way to help our allies? Slowly. We're not involved. They're coming to pick it up. But why do we want them to pick it up? Right, the U-boats in World War I, that same kind of memory. So they will pick it up. Then Germany attacks Russia. That was a bad idea. And America says, we will now become the arsenal of democracy. We must provide weapons for everyone. And the internationalists were like, yeah, we should defend America by defending who? Our allies. If we help Britain, we defend America because they are the last shield. Isolationists are like, you're crazy. You know what we should be focusing on? American first. So we focus on defense and only defense. And if they come to our shores, then so be it. But should we waste American lives trying to defend another country? The British, no less? No way. Well, FDR lets the American people debate it, but does he need to supply the British with much-needed destroyers? So he says, all right, loophole. I can't sell you any military goods because of the cash and carry law, but I can trade you. So he trades England 50 World War I destroyers for 8 Latin American bases. And technically, is he pretty much supplying them with weapons for the war? Yeah. Yes, but he's like, oh, it was a trade. I'm not selling them anything. You didn't say I couldn't trade. If not forbidden, then allowed. So that happens. And the Americans are pissed, but he says, you know what? Screw it. For freedom speech. We have to keep the world safe for speech, worship, from want, and from fear. You guys go with the for freedom speech? You should know it. Then we decide from want and from fear. From want. You guys know what from want is? From like hunger, from like, from wanting, to get a good night's sleep, from wanting, to be able to be not thirsty. Anyway. So after giving the for freedom speech, people are like, oh my gosh, FDR is right. So he says, none of this game anymore. We will openly lend and lease weapons to the British and our allies. And thus are we now actively declaring economic war against the British. Yeah. This is economic declaration of war. Sorry, the Germans. Economic declaration of war against the Germans. And we spend over $48 billion on it. Lend-lease. And the money went around the world. Then we have the Atlantic Conference, where we draft up what? We create the Atlantic Charter, which is the foundation of the what organization? United Nations. It'll become the foundation of the United Nations. We also plan our attack on Europe. And then a date that will live in infamy. I was born. No. Pearl Harbor. We're attacked by the Japanese. Boom, 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 boom. And he says, to war then! And we declare war. Now it's time to fight. And so the home front. Ready? Home front. What do we do at home? So very much like World War I. Military mobilization. Selective Service Act. Not surprising there, right? Walks, waves, and wafts. Are women going to play more of a role in the military this time? Yes. Now, are they going to fight in combat? No, but they'll serve as auxiliary, drivers, artillery cannon fire, pilots, that kind of thing. They'll also wear gas masks into battle, which is pretty cool. World War II. Economic mobilization through the Office of War Mobilization. Guys, why did we win this war? Because we outproduced our enemy. Our economy was far stronger than theirs, so that's why we won this war. Led by the War Production Board, which will outproduce our enemies. We're going to bowl them over. Remember Razzle Dazzle? So we made 40 billion bullets, 300,000 aircraft, 76,000 ships, 86,000 tanks, and 2.6 million machine guns. The pink plane flown when? Sunrise and sunset to give it that invincible shade. And then there's Razzle Dazzle. Razzle Dazzle. Yep. It wasn't just black and white. I mean, back then the water was black and white. That's how they looked. We had to make sure that they were, keeping secrets, whatever else. So that happened. It's literally, do you guys get it now? It's a booby trap. It's a double entendre. Rosie the Riveter will play a pretty key role. Encourage women to do what? Working in factories, whatever else. Next year I'll just put my picture there. World War II daycare centers help support women that were working. Eventually women will leave and return home during the cult of domesticity. War Labor Board will make sure that everyone kind of works together. Office of Economic Stabilization. So we're going to go ahead. Is rationing optional or mandatory? Mandatory. Is that different from World War I? Yes. World War I is optional. World War II, mandatory. Cut prices, all that stuff. Office of Price Administration, things like conserving gas. When you ride with Hitler, when you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. So make sure that you carpool, otherwise you're riding with Hitler. No, I drive a hybrid. So when I drive, I'm bringing the dinosaurs back to life. That's what I do. Mandatory rationing, like we said. Again, Batman and Superman and Robin. Again, and the best argument is, why aren't they fighting? Why with all their arsenal and ability are they gardening instead of going off to fight in the war? Like, this seems like a good use of our skills. 6 months of gardening. Oh, there's a war? No one told me. Yeah, Robin can stay and farm, but like Superman and Batman should go and fight. Smith-Connolly Anti-Strike Act. This said what? Yeah, they were not allowed to strike, because do we want workers to go on strike during the war? No, that's dangerous for soldiers. So we banned strikes. Treasury Department, what was their role? Victory bonds, same as always. Discrimination during Second Northern Migration. What's ultimately going to happen here when they move up north? Race riots, so that's a problem. So you have A. Philip Randolph demanding equal access, desegregation. He had a March on Washington movement, therefore he becomes known as the father of the the civil rights movement. And does he get what he wants? Most. He gets most of what he wants, and eventually he'll get everything that he wanted. Fair Employment Practices Committee to make sure that who gets hired? Black Americans. You also have the Bracero program, which brings in who? Mexicans. Why do we need Mexicans to work right now? All the farmers are working. Zoot Suit riots will be as a result of that. Again, this is race riots between Mexican Americans and sailors. Code talkers, what role did they play? Which Native Americans? Navajo. Not the Cherokee, not the Sioux, the Navajo. How many of you guys got that right on the CST? Navajo. Oh, it was on some of them, yeah. Some of them had this question. And then, of course, we had to deal with the Japanese, because we believe that they were what? And how many instances was there a recording of a Japanese-American spy? 0. Unless history proves us wrong later, right? Which it sometimes does. We interned the Japanese because we felt that it was important through Executive Order 9066. You should know Executive Order 9066. In Supreme Court case of Korematsu v. U.S., Supreme Court ruled what? Internment is legal. So that's not so good. We eventually end internment in 1945. God bless America. We give the Japanese their reparations like 40 years later when they're old. And again, are we going to give them their money right away? No. Over 10 years. Thanks, America. Warfront. Remember the ship? The really deep order. Invasion of Normandy, Operation Overlord. You guys should know that. Just going to highlight that battle. Normandy. Opening of the Second Front. Who desperately wanted the Second Front to be opened? Russia. You should know that desperation for a Second Front from Russia. Germany surrenders. You should also know the strategy used. Should you know the battle? Midway, anyway?
Do they really emphasize on the battles? Like during the...
There's very few. This is why.
They won't give you
Up.
like a essay on...
No.
On any war except like probably the Declaration of Independence.
World War I, World War II. They'll ask about home front.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they'll ask about civil rights and race relations during Civil War.
Also fighting, right?
I mean, the only one is Civil War because that was domestic the entire war. But that's the only war that could happen. Every other war, no. Anyway, you should know the Battle of Midway as the turning point of the war. You should know island hopping strategy, right? That's definitely a must know. Island hopping. Was that on your test? CSAT?
Yeah,
I feel like it was, right? CST?
like Hawaii was like useful or something like that.
FDR dies. Truman, atomic bomb, Manhattan Project. You should know the Manhattan Project is the creation of the atomic bomb. By the way, fun fact, the Russians recently admitted that there was a spy in the Manhattan Project, and they knew about the atomic bomb from the very beginning. We don't know. We still don't know to this day which of the original scientists that helped develop the atomic bomb was the Russian spy. So like Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, yeah, they were spies, but we knew about them. But there was a high-level scientist that worked on the Manhattan Project, and we don't know who it was. A lot. Thousands of people, but it was a top official. We don't know who it is. Bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you guys should be familiar with. Those definitely you guys should know, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. VJ Day. You should also know why we dropped the bomb. Despite what the CST tells you, all of these are correct answers. Save American lives? Yes. Show off American superiority? Yes. Keep the Soviet Union out of Japan? Yes. These are all true. Even though the CST will make you think that only one of those is correct, they're all correct. So the CST offered you the fourth option and the second option, right? Yeah, which is dumb because those are both correct answers. So now, the second answer is, I guess, more commonly correct, but it doesn't mean that the fourth answer is wrong. That's also correct. That is why they dropped the bomb. Everyone good? Don't worry about the conferences so much. I mean, you should know the conferences, but... Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to go into Cold War. All right, ladies and gents, here we go. The Cold War, the final unit, Unit 10, starting with Truman. Again, there's a lot of stuff here that we're not going to go over again because we've gone over this before. These lectures are online, albeit with Blender, voice and Blender sounds. But again, if you need to revisit the Cold War, please do so online. I'm going to cover this pretty quickly. You guys should be familiar with the Iron Curtain, yes? The Iron Curtain speech. Did an actual Iron Curtain descend over Eastern Europe? A metaphorical Iron Curtain descended over Eastern Europe. But the basic idea was, could democracy spread beyond that Iron Curtain? And that was the problem, right? Because of Soviet influence, Soviet military, they had a stranglehold on Eastern Europe. So we decided there would be no way for us to be able to reclaim that territory. The Soviets were pretty upset with us, though, because we denied access to the second front, right? Or we delayed it anyway. And so they were pretty suspicious of us because of that delay. So that is definitely something we should be aware of. Proxy battles, yeah. You should be familiar with the World Bank and an International Monetary Fund. The basic idea is both of these were used by the United States to kind of get people to like America, right? Because what did they do? Yeah, they promoted economic growth, promoted American democracy, and saying, hey, your economy's better, right? Yup, it is. You can thank America for that. And so try to create goodwill. Okay. United Nations, you guys should be familiar with, so just know that. Don't worry about the German question, denazification. Occupy Germany, you guys should know, though. The splitting of Germany, yeah, you guys know the splitting of Germany? East Germany, West Germany. Why did the Western powers want a strong Germany? Why did the Western powers? England, France, Russia, England, France, America. Yeah, to be able to withstand against the Soviet aggression. Why do the Soviets want a weak Germany? They've been invaded, and they want to make sure to take over all of Germany in the future. Everyone good there? Germany's divided. Sucks for them. Reconstruction of Japan. And then containment. George Kennan was the founder of containment. You guys should know his name. You should know George Kennan. I know some of you guys were struggling with that on our little What Leaps Into Your Mind. By the way, we will go over that tomorrow. But George Kennan is someone that you guys should know. And he introduces the policy of containment. Now, Truman adopts the policy of containment and says, oh, we're going to go ahead and protect all countries being attacked by armed aggressors inside or outside with military, thus being known as the Truman Doctrine, the policy of containment. Now, will the policy of containment be continued throughout the rest of the Cold War? No. Yeah, it is. Even if Eisenhower has massive retaliation, even if Kennedy has, flexible response, even if Johnson has Gulf of Tonkin, and even if Nixon has détente and Vietnamization, that's all still containment, right? It's just that they're either adding to it or making it stronger or wider or whatever else, but every president will practice containment. Specifically, Truman Doctrine will deal with what two countries? Greece and Turkey. So be familiar with these two countries.
Military aid, right?
Military aid, correct. But we're also going to provide economic aid. And the basic idea here is we want to make sure that the European economy has recovered because it was destroyed during World War II. And if we can recover the European economy, then it'll less likely be susceptible to what? Communism. Communism. So we're going to help the Western European recover economically with economic aid, $12.5 billion. Here he is goaltending. And again, awesome propaganda pieces. The Soviets respond with the Molotov plan as their own Marshall Plan. It's not too successful, though. You should know the Organization of American States as another example of us trying to, again, prevent the spread of communism, or the OAS. Where are we trying to prevent the spread of communism? Latin America, very good. We also passed the National Security Act of 1947. You should know this act in particular. It creates the DOD, the NSA, CIA. Quiet down, folks. And of course, there's NSC 68, which makes what recommendation? Yeah, we should quadruple our military forces in order to prevent the spread of communism, right? In order to stem the spread of communism. We also use things like Voice of America in order to prevent the spread of communism and actually to spread capitalism and democracy across what? The Iron Curtain, other communist countries, to again make them more American friendly, to convince them that America is better. Then you have the awesome Berlin airlift. Remember, everyone remembers Berlin airlift?
Yes.
You have the Berlin blockade. Who creates the Berlin blockade, by the way? The Soviets. And where are they doing this? Which Germany? So, yes, but in which part of Germany? Which Germany do the Soviets control? East Germany. So the Soviets controlling East Germany blockade West Berlin. Everyone good with that so far? Okay. They blockade it to try to make sure that the Westerners give up on West Berlin. That was the basic idea, right? Well, the Westerners decide that we will not give up on Berlin. We will supply them. If we can't go by land, we'll go by air. Because what we're going to be doing, we're not going to need any roads. And they fly. They drop off milk and planes and people and chocolate and bags of junk. And the blockade wins, and the blockade ends, and the airlift wins. They drop off all the stuff. This is a propaganda success for America, right? Yes, ma'am. A little under a year. So a little under a year. It's a pretty long time. I think 11 months of just nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's pretty impressive. In any case, and in that time, very few people actually passed away. Then NATO was created, and NATO was created as what? But what is it?
It's a collective security.
Collective security, or a military alliance against whom? Yes, the Western American allies against the Soviet and its allies. And the idea was we were going to put all of our allies underneath our nuclear umbrella. Nuclear, not nuclear. Nuclear. Don't you dare say nuclear. Nuclear. Your IQ. You say it correctly. Nuclear, not nuclear. Warsaw Pact was a military reliance in response. Soviets explode their first bomb. Is that good for us?
No.
And the Cold War really begins, right? This is because of spies. China's also bad because they become communist. Did containment succeed or fail? Fail! Major failure. 25% of the population becomes communist overnight. You suck in containment if that happens. H-bomb, also not good. Then the Korean War. Regardless of what happens here, folks, here's invasion. MacArthur tries the Incheon landing. All this stuff is good, but the really important part is we won the war. And then what happened? Why did we lose? Because we invaded China. We won the war. We would have won. And yeah, they might have, had guerrilla attacks on us, but we controlled all of Korea. And then we got greedy and said, maybe if we attack China, nothing will happen. The great sleeping dragon wakes up, invades, attacks, and Truman fires MacArthur. Because MacArthur says we should do what? Yeah, we should use the H-bomb against China. Truman says, no, we're fighting a limited war. MacArthur says there is no substitute for victory. You're an idiot. And he gets fired. Significance, folks?
You're fired.
Yes, the civilians are in charge of the government. It's a good thing I didn't make that.
What happened till it's like after you got fired?
He tried to run for office. He lost. Anyway, you have the Korean armistice, which ends the war. For now. Now, here's my question, folks. Shh. Quiet. Was the Korean War a success or a failure with regard to containment? It is either a success or a failure. Which one is it? Why is it a success? It prevented the spread of communism, right? Is it okay if it stays in North Korea? Because it was there before. But it didn't spread. We pushed it back, and therefore we succeeded. Because is Truman the president of rollback? No, that's Eisenhower. So remember that, guys. There is a difference here. So domestic policy for Truman. Taft-Hartley Act. This is supposed to hurt what? Weaken labor unions by ending what? What practice? Taking away closed shops. And also saying, what could you no longer do? If? Yeah, any strikes that endanger the public safety are not allowed. Quiet, folks. Also, we're going to prevent the downturn of the economy with the GI Bill. Provide loans to veterans, right? You absolutely have to know the GI Bill. That's an absolute must. The GI Bill gave loans, business loans, college loans to veterans. Good there? Affluent society, people start moving into the suburbs. People start buying cookie-cutter houses. You see the rise of the middle class because people are earning more money because they went to college. So you have suburbanization and dads pushing their babies out of windows. You have Levittowns. Houses are cheaper because they're what? Because they're the same. So you have Levittowns and Levittowns, all the same. I have. Same thing. You also have everyone moving to the Sun Belt. Shh. Quiet, please. Why are people moving to the Sun Belt? What are they following? Yeah, well, the textile industry is declining, and they're going to be following the new jobs, aerospace, electrical jobs. The new industries, computer industry, technology industry are moving to the Sun Belt, and so will the high-paying jobs. And because high-paying jobs are now in these regions, what can women now do? Stay at home, return to the cult of domesticity. They can take care of their kids and make lots of pancakes. Will TV shows promote this cult of domesticity? Father Knows Best, Ozzie and Harriet. Leave It to Beaver. And of course, there's the baby boom with a crap load of kids. Here are babies for those that don't know. I know. Lots of babies. And of course, Benjamin Spock, Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care. You know what you should do with your baby? Take care of it. Oh. Got it. Other policies. He got civil rights for African Americans by doing what successfully? What did he do to the military, guys? Desegregation of the military. Shh. That's really critical, folks, because that's one of the few civil rights successes that he has, right? So you should know about Truman desegregating the military. It was not Johnson. It was not Kennedy. It was Truman who desegregated the military. You should also know the 22nd Amendment, 2-term limits. That happened because, again, there's that. And then, of course, you have the anti-communist crusade. So just some laws you guys should know. You don't have to know all of these, guys. Let me just show you the ones you do have to know. Snow. Yes, you should know whack. Basic idea of us trying to discover all the un-American activities that might be communists. You should know Truman's loyalty program, investigating federal employees to see if they were actually communists or loyal to America. You should know Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, those communist spies. But not the top-level spies, just one of the many spies. We spied on each other all the time. McCarthyism, you should know about that witch hunt that we had for, we had the witch hunt for communists. Eventually, the downfall is when he accused who of having military. And the other problem was that what did he do? So he put it on TV. So it was the TV army hearings that killed him. Had he just done it behind closed doors, it would have been fine. Like, assume that, I was interrogating all of you, so you guys would come in here and you guys just leave crying. Like, what happened? Mr. King, proved I was a communist. But if you found out, if you watched it, I was just like slapping you and beating you. Say you're a communist or I'll tear out your fingernails. Then maybe you would not be so willing to trust those hearings. You had the election in 1948 where everyone thought that who was going to win? Dewey, because who broke away from the Democratic Party? Yeah, guys, you should know the Dixiecrat Party. The Dixiecrat Party came to power because they opposed what? Yeah, they opposed civil rights for blacks. So that's why they created their own party. They're a Southern states' rights party that said we shouldn't be forced to give blacks civil rights, so they created their own political party. That's why, though. But see, everyone thought that Dewey was going to win because it was divided. But it turned out not going to work. That's why everyone already printed a newspaper ahead of time. Anyway, Truman's Fair Deal was just a continuation of what? New Deal policies, good. And then that's Truman. You guys ready for Eisenhower? Boom. Here we go. Eisenhower runs with Nixon. So let's talk about his... Quiet down, folks. Let's talk about his foreign policy first. Eisenhower's foreign policy was crafted by John Foster Dulles. And he really wanted to liberate Europe. And, he wanted to fight things like... Oh, you know how we had Radio Free Europe? There was also Radio Moscow. So the Russians were also doing it while we were doing the same thing. They're like, Russia's pretty awesome. In Russia, road forks you. You guys know from Simpsons? Good joke. Anyway, he also believed in massive retaliation. Now, does that mean that he got rid of containment completely? He just said, we will contain and we will destroy all of our enemies. But he believed in massive retaliation. He also wanted to do what? He wanted to destroy communism with massive retaliation. And how are we going to get rid of communism? By doing what? Rollback. We want to roll back the Iron Curtain. So you should be familiar with rollback. Everyone good with that? Massive retaliation and rollback. And again, does that mean he got rid of containment? No, we don't want to spread any further. But can we now start eliminating it where it is? Yes. He also believed in brinkmanship. Basic idea meaning, is he willing to go to war? Or to the brink of war? He said, yeah, because I will not back down because I'm America. And America does not back down. Cool. But ultimately, is mutually assured destruction going to work? I mean, not mutually assured destruction. Is brinkmanship going to work? No, because if we destroy them, they're also going to destroy us. So this doesn't work out so well. So mad is really what's going to kill us. Nothing, it's made up for the cartoon. You don't know Z-Bomb? So how do we respond? So again, the question is, how do we make ourselves feel better? Well, civil defense. Don't worry, if there's a nuclear attack, we can duck, or you can hide in a shelter for like 90 years, I guess. Fallout shelters are created. There's duck and cover. Or if there's a nuclear blast, don't worry, just duck and cover. So if North Korea attacks, don't worry, guys, just duck and cover. National Emergency Alarm Repeater. Don't worry about this one. You don't know this. So he rejected containment in that it wasn't enough. But does that mean that he wasn't going to prevent the spread of communism? No, he was still going to prevent it. He was just like, containment's not enough. He said, we have to do more. And so he has a new look military, which relies more on what? That will use what? Nuclear missiles, and less on what? Army, Navy, soldiers, whatever else. Bombings. Bomb, 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 bomb. More bang for the buck. Again, spend less on nuclear missiles. Spend more on nuclear missiles, less on soldiers and their wages. We'll get more bang for our buck. There we are. Don't worry about Project Furtherance. Not important. That was just cool. Project Furtherance. We are going to nuke China and Russia if the president goes missing. It doesn't matter if they attacked us or not. Project Furtherance. You don't have to know it. It was just like, what the hell? Yeah. Anyway, when Eisenhower leaves office, though, in his farewell address, he warns that the government has become, or the economy and society have become too reliant on the military-industrial complex. So he says, maybe we should reduce our reliance on the military. Make sense to everyone there? Okay, cool. The Vietnam War will begin under his tenure. South Vietnam, we'll talk more about. Oh, you should know CETO as well. No, Ho Chi Minh. You guys know Ho Chi Minh? No Dinh Diem in South Vietnam. Remember, No Dinh Diem was very unpopular, so some monk set himself on fire. Which proves that he's very unpopular, because if setting yourself on fire is better than living in that country, clearly there's something wrong with that country, right? CETO was designed to do what? Prevent the spread of communism, because we believed in what idea? Domino theory. Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, India, Bangladesh. So luckily Stalin dies, which is awesome. Khrushchev comes to power. Open Skies Agreement. You guys should know about that transparency and the Open Skies Agreement. That's definitely going to help things out when we're open with each other. Hungarian uprising ruins everything, though, right? Because Hungary's like, don't worry, America will help us. And then did we help them? No. Because we didn't want to go to war over Hungary. Sorry, Hungary. But America just did not feel like it was worth it at the time. And it made us look like failures. That was a failure. So, did massive retaliation actually work out? No. They attacked one of our future allies, and we did nothing in response. Then they sent Sputnik into the air, and is that terrifying for us? Yes, because now if they can send a satellite into space, that means they could probably what? They can what? They can hit us with a missile. And so now we believe that there is a missile gap, and we must get rid of the missile gap. So you should be aware of the missile gap. And in order to combat the missile gap, we create the National Defense Education Act and ask kids to study what? Science and math and engineering, to go to school. Then we send a missile into space, and that's pretty cool. We also create NASA. Go NASA.
Who is NASA Cuban?
Eisenhower? Yeah. No, not yet. I mean, Kennedy wanted to be like, oh, we should go to the moon, but he created NASA. I mean, we created NASA to create rocket engines. It was Eisenhower who created it. Anyway, folks, ultimatum on Berlin then. Shh, don't worry about this one so much. But you should know the kitchen debates in which Khrushchev and Nixon eased tension. So that's another example. Nikita Khrushchev. The U-2 spying plane incident, did it increase or decrease tensions? Increase because they caught us spying on them, which is not so good. They're like, oh, that's a plane. The Iran Contra problem. Iran. When the CIA got involved and overthrew the Iranians, which resulted in the Iranian Revolution much later. Yeah, it's Carter's administration. You should also know the Suez Crisis, in which who attacked Egypt? British, French, and Israelis, and who told them to get out? The U.S. and Eisenhower established the Eisenhower Doctrine, saying America will prevent the spread of communism. Not you, I. And then there was Cuba, and how successfully did we prevent the spread of communism in Cuba? So this is a failure of what organization? The OAS. It's a failure of the OAS. Domestic policies, you have dynamic conservatism. So he was willing to keep some New Deal programs. Yes.
Castro still alive?
Yep. He's almost dead. He's sick. He's almost dead. Castro.
Isn't his brother too, like getting sick too?
Well, Raul is already in charge. Raul Castro is already in charge, and he already said he's going to step down after the end of his term. And then they're going to have elections, which is the first time Cuba will have elections since 1959. All right, so dynamic conservatism. He keeps some New Deal programs. You should also know the interstate highway system. That's definitely a must. So you guys should know the IHS. Also the federal highway system. Don't get confused. Creates a car culture. Computers and stuff. Changing identity of women. Cult of domesticity. And a feminine mystique. Sexual allure for women. Playboy introduces himself for the first time. We develop a consumer culture again. So it's pretty much the 1920s all over again, right? Credit cards introduced at this time. TVs are introduced at this time. Tupperware is introduced at this time. Disneyland is introduced as leisure. TVs, massive TVs, and yet tiny. Teen culture, rock and roll. You guys should be familiar with the music of the time. Nope, no time. Go back, it's online. No, the beatniks. You guys know the beatnik culture? They're against the consumerism of the materialism of the 1950s, right? They're like, everyone's just buying stuff and happy, and they don't see the problems of racism and war, and that's not cool, man. They're kind of like hipsters. Again, rebel without a cause. Then civil rights. You should know civil rights under Eisenhower. This is important because you'll probably get a question about civil rights. You should know about the problems of Jim Crow. Everyone know what Jim Crow is? Segregation and not having the right to vote. Also a problem, lynching. So not good. So how do we deal with these problems? What's Eisenhower's role going to be? Yeah, very little, right? Is he going to be an active civil rights president? No. I mean, will he be an active or a reactive president? Reactive. He's like, oh, problem. Okay, I'll fix it because I have to, not because I want to help civil rights. Anyway, Earl Warren will do a lot of the work for him. So you guys should know Earl Warren. He will be the president that fights for individual rights. We know this because one of the most important Supreme Court cases that he passes is what? Brown v. Board of Education. In the next picture, she slaps her with that spiral notebook. Of course, it overturns Plessy v. Ferguson, and it desegregates public schools. Everyone good there? Right? Separate but equal is not actually equal. Everyone good with that? Okay. And so the response is massive resistance. We refuse to go to school with black children. So they're like, okay, then don't go to school. KKK comes back, resurges again out of anger. And yet, is FDR going to do anything about it? He's like, I'm just going to sit here and watch. Because I'm going to let this play out. Let's see where this goes. Well, it goes to Little Rock. And the governor, Orville Faubus, says, I will not allow these black children to come into white schools. And so what does he do? How does he prevent them from coming in? No, not by law. Who does he send? George? He sends in the National Guard. So Orville Faubus sends in the National Guard. And Eisenhower is like, you can't do that because the Supreme Court passed a law and you must let the Little Rock Nine into the school. And so what did Eisenhower do? He sent in the U.S. military to escort these kids into the school. Good? Good. Then Rosa Parks, she was kicked off the bus because she refused to take out her seat, and therefore she becomes the mother of the civil rights movement. For those of you that are not familiar with the game, if someone calls shotgun, you should run to the seat anyway, sit down, and then call Rosa Parks.
Wait, so who's the mother and the father is
Philip Randolph.
Philip Randolph.
As a result of Rosa Parks being kicked off the bus and segregation, Martin Luther King organizes the Montgomery Bus Boycott, which suggested that what? Blacks would not use the bus, right? They were going to boycott the bus. And so they did. And does the boycott succeed? Yes, it does. And Martin Luther King successfully becomes one of the non-violent leaders of the Black Rights Movement as head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. You guys should know all of these things. You will probably, again, get a question on the civil rights on your AP test this year. Everyone good so far? Again, other examples are the sit-in movement, in which these students refused to get up, even though they sat in the white-only section. And despite all the treatment, they sat there peacefully, as inspired by Martin Luther King.
Was that a white couple?
Yes, again, whites and blacks who believed in desegregation sat there together. Then you have SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, another organization that promoted nonviolent resistance. Was it happy or sad? Period of conformity? Increase or decrease? All of those things. Everyone good on civil rights? Yep. Okay. Well, we're doing these units in 15 minutes. Imagine if the whole year went that bad.
Keep saying that. Will you ever do that?
No. Teach the class as quickly as I have been. Kennedy and Johnson and the 1960s. Everyone ready? Okay, so in the next election, Kennedy runs against Nixon. And Kennedy's like, I am going to give a new frontier of unknown opportunities. He does so, but he's a Catholic, and people were concerned. But are things okay still? Yeah, he's fine. Also, it's one of the first televised debates. And so, interestingly enough, if you watched it on TV, who won? If you watched it on TV, who won? And if you heard it on the radio, who won? Which shows the power of Television. So that's the first televised debate, and Kennedy won the election because of TV. So it's the closest election in history, though, as a result, because the difference is only 120,000 votes. That's not a very big difference, folks. So Kennedy wins, and in his inauguration, he says, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." The only Catholic president. But was he the youngest president? No. Who's the R? 42.
Oh, like
Yep. His new policy was something called domestic policy, but is it going to get anywhere fast? No, because he's going to have to deal with a conservative Congress, right? So his new frontier really won't get anywhere. His wagon is again hitched to some conservative Republicans. So he does a few things, but really I don't know any of this stuff. Just know that he tried to continue New Deal programs, which mostly failed. Now he does successfully fight the steel industry, so you should be familiar with the steel industry. But one of his biggest achievements, which he doesn't see the end of, is the space race, where he promises by the end of the decade we will be on the moon. And he was right. By 1969, we reached the moon. The astronauts on the moon were Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. You know, I guess they filmed this in Los Angeles. Studio in LA. Civil rights under Kennedy. Did he do a lot? Is he an active or a reactive civil rights president? Active. That's on the wrong slide. First off, we desegregated buses, right? Boynton v. Virginia desegregated buses. So how are we going to make sure that these buses stay desegregated? Freedom rides. We're going to go ahead and ride those buses through what? Just ride them from like Baldwin Park to San Bernardino? Across state lines, because we got to make sure that interstate buses are desegregated. And this is organized by CORE, the Congress on Racial Equality, the organizers. Here they are on their trip. And how did the South respond?
We bombed them.
They were not too happy, so they bombed it. And so Robert F. Kennedy sends who? The U.S. Marshals. And now will Southerners be as inclined to attack these buses? No, because U.S. Marshals are now present. And if you kill one of these guys, that's definitely not a good thing. James Meredith, another example. He was banned to go to University of Mississippi. And how did we make sure he got to go? Sent in the military to protect him. So James Meredith and Ole Miss. Then there's a showdown in Birmingham, Alabama, where they were going to desegregate the city, right? And so they marched, and Martin Luther King was arrested. And he writes the very famous letter, Letters from a Birmingham Jail. Wait means never. So do it now. That justice too long delayed is justice denied. And so, unfortunately, he used children as part of his protests, but again, nonetheless, it didn't make a difference. They were brutalized in Birmingham. Shh. Quiet, please. But eventually, is Birmingham desegregated? Yes, it is. Hooray. In response to all of this, you have the assassination of Medgar Evers, because the Southerners are pretty unhappy. And as a result, we have the March on Washington movement, where if you go with me to Washington, D.C. next year, we'll be able to reenact this scene. Who here is still interested in going on that trip? Well, then go. No, I stay in the hotel, you guys stay on the bus. No, it's money. It's very expensive, so I get to stay on the hotel. It's very nice. Penthouse. So, Kennedy in the Cold War. Quiet, please. Kennedy's response to the Cold War was that massive retaliation. Was it working? No, it was not. And so we're going to go back to containment, but instead of adding massive retaliation, what is his little spice on it going to be? Flexible response. We will be flexible. You slap me, I slap you. You shoot me, I shoot you. But we will be flexible. It's not you slap me, nuclear war. Okay, there's a different amount of response. He creates the Green Berets to allow us to respond to all different types of scenarios. And then there's the Bay of Pigs invasion, which is not good. That's a huge failure and an embarrassment for America. So there's that. So you should know the failure of the Bay of Pigs is an embarrassment for America. But he tries to make up for it indirectly through the Peace Corps. Peace Corps is we're going to make people like us by having the most intelligent Americans go to other countries and help them, right? Education, economies, water, health, all that stuff. Peace Corps. Alliance for Progress. What was this? Yeah, we're supposed to give money to Latin America to improve their economies in order to prevent the spread of communism, also known as the Latin American Marshall Plan. You should know this.
Okay, so in the if they were to give you an essay on it, can you put Latin American Marshall Plan?
Yeah.
Instead of the Alliance for Progress?
You should call it the Alliance for Progress, but if you can't remember, and we also had a very similar program in Latin America. I wouldn't call it the Latin American Marshall Plan. I would just say, and we also applied a similar program
To the Marshall Plan?
like the Marshall Plan in Latin America. And that way at least you'll get some points for it. Then you see the construction of the Berlin Wall to prevent, East Germans from escaping into West Germany. Cuban Missile Crisis. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yep. Not good, man.
Tell the story.
No, not right now. Let's go back in time like 2 months, and then I'll tell it then. Yes, dangerous, scary. The aftermath. Nuclear test ban treaty. Soviets removed missiles from Cuba. U.S. removed missiles from Turkey. We have the hotline established between the two countries. Cool. Kennedy's assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in. Johnson's presidency. Johnson believes in the Great Society, okay? And he does so because he's inspired by what book? By Michael Harrington. You should know the book. And by reading The Other America by Michael Harrington, he decides he wants to declare what? He decides to declare a war on poverty. So he does so through the Great Society. So you have all these different things he does: war on poverty, education, health, civil rights. You guys all have all this stuff? It's all in there. Education, Head Start, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Upward Bound. Health, he has Medicare. What is Upward Bound? Yeah, we have it here. Any questions about this? No? Good stuff? Just know he's trying to continue the New Deal program. Poverty in America, definitely a lot of big changes here. Federal aid to education, yep, spending a lot of money, Immigration Act of 1965, he's going to go ahead and end what? The quota system. By the way, who's this? Robert F. Kennedy. In addition, the Great Society and Civil Rights, he passes the 24th Amendment, which does what? Ends poll taxes. He also passes the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 to protect employment, right? Voting Rights Act of 1965, what does this do? No more literacy tests, and make sure that we prevent discrimination in voting. You should know Civil Rights Bill and Voting Rights Act of 1965. Then we also start promoting affirmative action, which means we should give what? preference to minorities in job and college admissions. Black leaders include Jesse Jackson and Thurgood Marshall. Jesse Jackson was a black rights leader. And who is Thurgood Marshall? The first black Supreme Court justice. And then there are the three different groups that were violent resistance. Nation of Islam, at one point led by Malcolm X. They were believed in black separatism, that we should separate and have black communities and white communities, and we could not live together. Everyone cool with that one? Eventually Malcolm X leaves, and he's assassinated by the Nation of Islam. Next, you had the Black Power movement led by Stokely Carmichael, at least he's one of them. And he was pretty upset that SNCC was moving too slowly and that non-violent just wasn't doing enough. So eventually he tries to convince SNCC to be more violent, and he'll eventually leave and join the Black Panthers led by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who are very much a very violent organization that believes that a race war is coming. Okay. Questions there?
So is the person sitting in charge that Huey Newton?
Yes. The long hot summers then, as you guys know, were caused by racism, right? Determined by the Kerner Commission. MLK is assassinated, and then you have all of these that we just talked about today. Cool with these people? Cool. You also have Chicano rights. You should know Cesar Chavez and United Farm Workers Union. There's their flag, so these two are connected. Everyone good with Cesar Chavez and UFW? Protecting the rights of farm workers. Gay rights movement, as known as the Stonewall Inn riot. You guys should be familiar with the Stonewall Inn riot. Counterculture of the 1960s. Tom Hayden and his SDS and free speech movement. These are examples of intellectuals that decide to fight back and want to change society. Anti-Vietnam War protests and music by Bob Dylan and all these people and the Beatles and Woodstock. You should know Woodstock, the 3 days of peace and music. And sex and drugs and rock and roll. And then Warren Board successes. You guys know these cases. Gideon v. Wainwright, lawyer. Escobedo, lawyer. Miranda v. Arizona, right to hear your rights. Right, so you guys should be familiar with these cases. So, was Johnson a good president? Yeah, why not? But were there failures? Some. Vietnam War, Ho Chi Minh, Viet Minh, all these things. You guys good with that? You guys don't know Dinh Diem, right? Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. We know Gulf of Tonkin Resolution?
Yes.
You should. Blank check powers. Very good. But he also promised not to expand the war in Vietnam, right? And then he did. He also had Operation Rolling Thunder or Operation Niagara, which was what?
3 years.
Bombing raids to destroy what? Ho Chi Minh Trail. So you should know that one. Then he expanded the military. And he lied. So is that going to be a problem for Johnson? Yes. General Westmoreland is one of the people in charge of the war. And you should just roughly know that we used napalm and Agent Orange during this war. Tet Offensive, success or failure? Well, let's talk about it this way. Military success or failure? Sorry. From the perspective of the North Vietnamese, was this a military success or a military failure? Failure. It did not successfully take over South Vietnam. From the perspective of the North Vietnamese, is this a propaganda success or a propaganda failure? Propaganda success, because at the end of this, how did America's public opinion change? We thought that the war was unwinnable. We thought there's no way we can win this war. So you have the anti-war movement. And because of what happened, Johnson decides to not run another term. The arguments being that, again, was Johnson spending too much money on this war? And not enough money on what? The Great Society program, the war on poverty. So you should be familiar that the foreign policy programs were dragging down his domestic policy programs. So Kennedy runs, but he's assassinated by Sirhan. And then Nixon runs and he wins, so Nixon wins the next election. Oh my gosh, I gotta end this. Go away, Kennedy. It won't go away. He remains. There you go. Kennedy refused to leave. Okay, so Nixon wins the next election, and we'll talk about that last slide. You guys ready?
Yes.
Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush. Let's see if we can finish this in 10 minutes. Here we go. Nixon inherits the war. He says, though, don't worry, the people support it because, yeah, the majority of people support it because they're not protesting. So silent majority. But he says we're going to end the war anyway via the Nixon Doctrine known as Vietnamization. What does that mean? Turn the war over to the Vietnamese, and we're going to slowly pull out of the war. And do we do that? Yes, we do. They go home, but then there's the My Lai massacre, which makes us question whether or not this war was worth fighting, because that guy like straight up killed all those people. Is that good? Not so good. And then there's a secret bombing of Cambodia. Is that good? Not so good, because we expanded the war unjustly. And then there's protests, and so students are killed. And so is that okay? No, and people are mad at Nixon, like kids are dying on your watch. That's not good. And Nixon says, if you're protesting, that's un-American, but, you know, whatever. Then Congress decides, Nixon, you've abused your power. We haven't been spending enough money on the Great Society, so we're going to repeal your war declaration powers here. And especially when the Pentagon Papers are released, which reveals what? Lie. So are we going to mistrust our government? Yeah. So we signed the Paris Peace Accords, pulling out of Vietnam. Then we signed the War Powers Act, saying that the president can't just declare war whenever they want, right? We reduced the war powers of the president. That's the War Powers Act. Questions there. Saigon falls, aftermath, not too good. We distrust the government, but we do have the 26th Amendment, which says change the voting age to 18. Old enough to fight, old enough to vote. The 26th Amendment. You're old enough to fight, old enough to vote. Then Nixon's Cold War policy, led by Henry Kissinger. You should know Kissinger. He believed in the policy of détente, which is the easing of tensions. How is he going to do that? Few things. By reducing nuclear weapons, SALT, and also through ping-pong diplomacy, right? Good? Domestic policies, Arab oil embargo, yeah, new federalism. He gives more power back to who? States. In terms of civil rights, he's not really in favor of either, but he will still support them. Roe v. Wade, abortion rights for women, affirmative regents, UC, or the Bakke case rather. Affirmative action is legal, but quotas are not. Rachel Carson, you guys know Rachel Carson? Silent Spring. 90 price freeze. Watergate, you guys know Watergate. Creep, you guys know Creep. We need to re-elect the president. That's going to get him fired because they break into the Watergate Hotel. Woodward and Bernstein find out what happened. They uncover the scandal. Everyone's connected. So Nixon, they asked Nixon to release the Watergate tapes. Nixon says no. Supreme Court case, U.S. v. Nixon says, rules that Nixon must give up the Watergate tapes. Gentlemen, please be quiet. Shh. So Nixon is about to be impeached. So what does Nixon do? He resigns. And there he is resigning, thus making Ford the next president of the United States, but never having been elected. Ford becomes president. The one thing you should know is Helsinki Accords, where he tries to fight for human rights. We're almost done here, guys. So Ford and human rights. You have Carter next. Carter creates Superfund, which tries to clean up environmentally degraded areas of America, especially 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear meltdown. He also tried to fight for human rights. He gave the Panama Canal back to the Panamanians. And he signed the Camp David Accords. What is this? Between Egypt and Israel. Of all of these, this is the one you must know. Camp David Accords. Also the Iran hostage crisis, that happened. Argo. He also signed SALT II, which helps reduce tension, SALT II. And he also boycotted the Olympics because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. He did that. And that year, what happened?
Everyone won.
So many countries won.
Why must we try to do that?
Then Reagan wins the next year, and he's helped by the moral majority, which is focused predominantly on what? The emphasis on religion and Christianity. You have Reaganomics, which is trickle down, so you guys should know Reaganomics and trickle down. Yeah. The major criticism, again, of Reaganomics is that, again, it wasn't fast enough, and it was giving money to the wealthy, and it wasn't going to the poor enough, and it wasn't stimulating the economy fast enough. Challenger Space Shuttle was when the spaceship exploded midair. I was born. Reagan's foreign policy, of course. Star Wars or Strategic Defense Initiative. What was the basic idea? A laser or space-based laser defense system. Did it work?
No.
Don't have the technology for it. And of course, he gives the evil empire speech saying that, the Soviet Union's an evil empire. Then Mikhail Gorbachev comes to power, which is awesome. Perestroika and glasnost will help us. Bush will become president. He promises no new taxes. Right, but he raises taxes anyway. He passes the Americans with Disabilities Act to provide easier access to those that are disabled. Then the Berlin Wall falls, which is pretty awesome. And the Soviet Union falls soon after, which is pretty awesome. Then Bush fights the Persian Gulf War. And these are all just like, maybe they'll ask them questions.
Wait, well, why aren't they as important as the Cold War and as World War II?
Because this is more recent history. Eventually, when they revise the test,
Like in 50 years, it'll be more
They'll try
in like 20 years, revise it.
Is it realized time to down the Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem I have. The longer this test goes, the harder this job is going to be for me. Because, like, okay, let's cram more stuff in the small period of time I already have. Bill Clinton gets elected. He deals with impeachment because of what?
Perjury.
Perjury. Not because he cheated on his wife. NAFTA, free trade agreement across the countries. Right? So from left to right, America, Mexico, and Canada. Again, George Bush, September 11th, War on Terror. President Obama, first black president. All right, guys. So, again, a few things. As you guys are reviewing, I highly recommend, again, that you practice essay writing if you can. Take the time during lunchtime to take a look at any of these outlines, to absorb these outlines, because any one of these could be asked again, maybe in a different way, but it's pretty much the same question. So make sure you guys do that. Make sure you guys study. And I'll be giving you a few handouts tomorrow with some essay questions that might come up, as well as some review for civil rights. But otherwise, again, make sure you guys are studying, not just for my test, but for all your others. And if you guys are coming in tomorrow, is anyone coming in tomorrow after school just to study? No? Okay, we'll have a meeting tomorrow anyway. That's fine. There's technically night sessions every night. So if you guys want to come in after school, and if you guys just want to, I can keep on going over thematic review. So if you guys just want me to keep lecturing at you, I can do that tomorrow after 4:30 when I come back. We can do that. If you want to do tomorrow again at 5 o'clock, I will be here. If someone shows up, I'll just lecture. If no one shows up, then eventually I'll go home. Same will be true for Wednesday. Right at 3 o'clock, I can lecture if you guys want me to. Same for Thursday. If you guys want to come in after school, I can lecture from 3 on. Again, I'm a resource, folks. This week, I will be giving you guys several practice tests as well. So just make sure. We need to practice. So we take it to practice multiple choice. Cool? Okay. Otherwise, folks, have a good day. I'll see you guys later.